Welcome to A Call to Action, a series presented by Great Eastern Radio and Brattleboro Community Television. We're covering many different topics from state shutdowns to our food supply. Today, we are talking with Josephson. He's the president and CEO of the Brattleboro Retreat. Louis, welcome to A Call to Action.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Let's get right into it. How is the retreat uniquely responding as an independent standalone psychiatric hospital to the COVID-19 crisis?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we've been here 185 years. We've never faced anything like this, as the whole country is in the same situation. But for us, there are some very particular issues that we're facing. So we are a hospital, but we are not an acute care medical hospital. So we don't have some of the bells and whistles that a normal hospital would have. And so in our facility, it's very challenging if we have patients who were COVID-19 positive to give them the medical care that they need. So what we've done in response to the crisis right now and to be responsive to the 13 other hospitals in the state is screen very carefully who we're admitting for COVID-19 symptoms. So everybody gets a very intensive health screening prior to admission. Every patient that's here every day gets their temperature taken twice a day, and we're monitoring them for symptoms. So we're very careful about that. We've stopped referrals coming in from out of state of Vermont. Sometimes we'll get people from New Hampshire or Massachusetts. We've freed up every bed that we have to take people with psychiatric crisis out of Vermont hospital emergency rooms so they can focus on the COVID-19 patients. But our biggest concern here is, given our older facility and that we don't have all the care that an acute hospital would have for medical conditions, we really need to partner with Brattleboro Memorial and other facilities in the area when we have somebody who's getting sicker from COVID-19 to get them out of the retreat, not contaminate our operation, so we can keep admitting people who are healthy but are in psychiatric crisis.
Okay. So now we've got this shelter in place order going on right now.
Right.
What does that mean for the patients that are currently there then? I mean, how do you deal with those patients?
Well, I don't think it's changed much in terms of the day of a life of somebody who's getting care here on an inpatient psychiatric unit. At this point, people don't have privileges to go out into town or on our grounds even, because that is something that's changed over many years, where the federal government says that's not something we can do. So if people think that we still do that, we haven't been able to do that. So people are on the units. There's recreational space throughout our buildings, so people get off the units, they can go outside, but they're not in the community in that sense. The biggest change, I think, for patients who are here is the visitation policy. So we've greatly, like all hospitals, greatly restricted visitation. We are doing our best with telelinks and phone to keep people connected to their families and loved ones, but we've really cut back on people visiting from the outside.
Okay. Fair enough. It's very trying times, and I know that the landscape is forever changing. So it's a fair but unfair question all at the same time.
Oh, good question. Thank you.
Have you found that you're somewhat insulated from the financial market? I mean, do you have financial concerns with everything that's going on?
Yeah, we do. People may recall from around the new year, it was some publicity about the retreat and our financial struggles that have been many years in the making, and we've been working quietly with our state partners these last couple of months to address that. So I'm hopeful we're making progress, but COVID-19 has really changed things dramatically. So on a typical day here at the retreat, we would have over 100 people on inpatient care units, making us one of the largest inpatient hospitals in the state of Vermont. And so we have, as I mentioned, restricted admitting people from out of state, and are trying to keep beds open to take people out of emergency rooms as they need to be. And that's really important to our finances. So we get paid basically by the number of people we serve. If we're serving fewer people, we're getting paid less. So we have let the governor and his team know that that's the case. Lots of hospitals have come forward just this week saying we need extra cash support. So, if you went to an acute care hospital right now, they would tell you, or people in the community have experienced elective surgeries being canceled, tests being canceled, that's all revenue that hospitals count on. For us, we don't have those kind of sources of revenue, but when we're serving fewer people inpatient, that's a big deal. So this morning when I got into the office, we had about 60 people inpatient. That's 30 plus people fewer than an average day. So that means about a third of our revenue is down. And we've had to close some other outpatient programs because your viewers might know a lot of what we do is group therapy, and that's not a good modality right now, putting a lot of people in a room together in close proximity to talk. So our outpatient services have moved a lot to telehealth, which is great, but we have taken a hit to our revenue there. Our school, we have a school for special needs kids here. We've moved to online learning. So there's been a little less of a financial impact, but as we speak, we are formulating sort of a weekly amount that we're going to look for from the state and the federal government to help us through the COVID-19 crisis.
So for I guess this is an employee-based thing, and I know that there's you have nurses and you have all that. How has the crisis affected the overall working morale of the Brattleboro Retreat?
It's a great question. We have wonderful staff here, very committed staff. It is challenging. I think if you went to any hospital in the country right now and you look at some of the reports, people are being asked to work in really difficult conditions, and we're right there with everyone. Our biggest concern right now is personal protective equipment, PPE. We don't have enough. No hospital in the country has enough right now. So we're making very tough decisions, and staff have said, can I get masked and gowned? And we're like, yes, you can. If we have a particular patient we see that's expressing symptoms, we will gown you and mask you, but we're not, masking everyone all day long. We would burn through all of our protective equipment in a couple of days. And so we're making these very tough decisions. There are staff who've signed on here, and doing psychiatric care inpatient can have its risks. You get people who are struggling with their symptoms, they might lash out at us. And so I think people who come to work at the retreat realize on a given day they might get pushed or shoved by a patient who's struggling with their symptoms, but they didn't sign up to work with a virus like this. And so like many hospitals, people are voting with their feet and saying, not for me and my family. So we've seen some reduction in staff, but it's been true at the state psychiatric hospital as well. But what we pledged is as soon as we have any concerns about you as an employee, you go home. We're doing the confinement and watching, and we've actually had a number of staff who finished confinement have come back to work, which is wonderful. So we're being very conservative about that. We will use our PPE as soon as we are concerned, and we're screening really tightly on admitting patients. Knock wood, this has been, to this date, we have not had a positive patient, and we have not had a positive staff person who's been on the job. So I hope that holds for a while.
Yeah, no, from your mouth to the universe,
yes.
that should be delivered. So the governor, as we know by now, has issued a stay-at-home order to try to flatten the curve of COVID-19, and that's in place until April 15th. What advice, now that it's becoming this real thing, what advice would you, as a mental health professional, be giving to folks and telling people regarding this sort of thing?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's an incredibly stressful experience, like nothing we've experienced in our lifetimes. And so people, I think, are reeling a little bit. They're confined, as you said. They may have their income disrupted. Kids are home from school. College students are back at home. That's been my experience at home. So everything's topsy-turvy right now, and not normal. And you do need to practice social distancing. The one thing we can control that's great is our social distancing practice. So if you're at the Hannaford on Putney Road, you need to make sure, even if other people are less conscious about social distance, you need to do what you can do. That being said, when you're home in those pressure cooker situations with a lot of stress, it's difficult. So a couple of key things we can do. Control the things you can control, including watching media. So a certain amount of us, our minds need to know what's happening in the world. And that's healthy, and we need to plan for that. But too much media is going to swamp you. And the media tends to focus on the most concerning things, of course, and you get your head filled with all sorts of worries and things you can't control. So I advise people, put down your phone. Don't listen to your phone. and try to create a space where you're doing something fun during your day. And I know it may sound very challenging, but whether it's a board game or going outside for a walk or anything you can do, cooking something new you haven't cooked before, people really need to avail themselves of these. So distract yourself, stay away from toxic media, because just too much of it is toxic, and it's not the media's fault. It's just we get overload. And be kind to yourself, be kind to your situation. This is unprecedented. And the biggest thing we know in our field is any sort of practice of meditation, mindfulness, all of that is really a big deal. I'll give you a personal example. So this morning I'm at breakfast. I've got a million things to do at the office. We're in the middle of a crisis, and I realize I'm sort of wolfing down my bagel and coffee and a piece of an orange. And I said, time out, Louis. You got to slow down, taste your coffee, experience the crispiness of the bagel, enjoy the orange, and feel the juice in your system. And it totally changed my experience. And it may only last for a little while, but it's so important to interrupt that kind of high stress, high tension space we all get into.
Right, because if you keep twisting and keep twisting and keep twisting, eventually something snaps. So that is sound advice, even if it's just for the minute that you're in.
Absolutely. So, don't be hard on yourself. Don't think you have to do a 20-minute meditation.
Right. And I've been saying this throughout that, that you have to be kind of within the minute. If you don't respect social distancing, just respect that somebody else might respect that, and being patient within the moment that you're in. So we don't know how long we're going to be in this fight. We don't know how long we're going to be sequestered, having to stay away from one another, not give a friend that you haven't seen in a while a hug. Do you anticipate that new habits will be created out of this fear, i.e. social distancing, face masks, gloves, when we finally do prevail through this? Do you think that we'll be looking at a different culture?
I think in some ways, I mean, it's hard to anticipate when the virus subsists, and it will go away at one point. I think there'll probably be this burst of wanting to get out and reconnect with friends and loved ones and do things you haven't been able to do. But I think people, we've had a little bit of trauma here. I was talking to someone the other day, and they found some old video or photos that we were looking at from a trip. And their remark was, I can't believe how close people are sitting together. And that was the old way, right? So for that lens to just, flip off now that we're back to normal is probably going to take some time. I think the best thing we can do as a country in terms of getting back to normal is trying to make sure that we're ready for the next thing. That's going to give people the reassurance, and that we've got the muscle memory that if we need to social distance, we know how to do it. That we pre-position protective equipment for hospitals, that we have respirators on hand, all of that. If we can get that to the best possible situation, the president has said this himself, he's like, we need to be independent, be able to handle this kind of crisis in the future. That I think will give people more peace of mind and be able to let go. So I'm hoping that we will invest as a country in that those resources. So God forbid it happens again, we feel more confident, we're not scrambling.
Right, and we'll get through this as you've alluded to, and I think that we passed out a lot of good sound advice from kind of what I would consider the cornerstone for that sort of advice that we were looking for. So thank you for joining a call to action today. Is there anything else out there that you feel like maybe that we've missed that you would like to put out there?
No, I appreciate your calling us and talking about the mental health piece. I would just ask for the community to send some love to our staff on the front lines. I know people think, well, what does a psychiatric facility do in the middle of this COVID-19 crisis? We are saving lives. We will have people with psychiatric illness who have the virus. And by our functioning here and keeping doing what we do, we're getting people in a psychiatric crisis out of emergency rooms so your loved ones can be treated if they had the virus. And so send us love, send us good vibes. Our staff are doing, really amazing work and leaning into this crisis. And we're here for the state of Vermont.
Well, I've been saying throughout this whole thing, how we act now will directly correlate with how we rebound later. The Brattleboro Retreat has always been a fantastic community partner, so
Thank you.
we should definitely show that love that you suggest right back to you, and together we're stronger. So thank you for
Thank you.
being there. Thank you for jumping on the call, and by first and foremost, be safe.
Yes, you too. Thank you for the time. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care.